Fans of the long-running series American Pickers have had to do their fair share of worrying about former star Frank Fritz since the show premiered in 2010. And today, things are looking worse for Frank than ever. After a bout of alcoholism that saw him kicked off the series, it seemed like he was finally managing to turn his life around. But all hope of him returning to the show came crashing down when it was revealed in the summer of 2022 that he had suffered a debilitating stroke. American Pickers is still going strong with his former co-star Mike Wolfe. Join Facts First as we explore how American Pickers Mike and Frank still aren't talking after his stroke. Frank Fritz aficionados are used to bad news. However, fans of the former American Pickers star weren't prepared in the summer of 2022 when it was revealed he had suffered a debilitating stroke. It's now been a few months and fans have been chomping at the bit for some good news. Sadly, it seems there isn't much to be had. Frank is doing his best to recover from the stroke, but things aren't looking good. In October of 2022, it was revealed things had gotten so bad he was in need of a guardian. That month, Frank Fritz was placed under conservatorship on account of the damage done by the stroke. The reason for the conservatorship is clear. It appears Frank's health is so poor in the wake of his stroke, he's no longer capable of taking care of himself. He can't perform his day-to-day tasks, and he also is no longer capable of making his own life decisions. After suffering his stroke in July, Frank was kept in the hospital for a month. He was released to a rehabilitation center after being given the okay to leave the hospital. Though those close to the former American Pickers star are remaining optimistic, it seems the recovery process will be long and arduous. The conservatorship will remain in effect until then, and it's possible he'll never fully recover. Frank has been placed in the care of a longtime friend. As one might have guessed, this friend is not Mike Wolfe. Mike was Frank's fellow star on American Pickers. That is, until Mike booted him off the show. Frank was kicked off unceremoniously at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to the 2022 stroke, Frank could be heard in the media proclaiming Mike hadn't even talked to him in several years. Given that the two were longtime friends before American Pickers ever came on the air, many have wondered what came between them. Why was Frank fired? While Frank Fritz's well-being is being placed in the hands of his longtime friend, his finances are being managed by a figure from his bank. Frank doesn't have any close family, and it's arguably Mike Wolfe that he's closest to. When the two started American Pickers together, it changed the name of the game when it came to reality TV. The show put a spin on the traditional antique roadshow format, providing a much more homespun take on competing reality series like Pawn Stars. Though American Pickers is still on the air and seems to still be doing fairly well in the ratings, it can't be denied that Frank's absence has been felt amongst the show's diehard fan base. Frank stopped showing up in the show in 2020, just before the start of the pandemic. Initially, there was no reason given for why Frank was no longer a part of the team. Many fans assumed the star possibly had gotten COVID, but it later turned out there had been a falling out between him and longtime friend Mike Wolfe. It's still unclear what exactly happened between the two. They'd been friends for decades before American Pickers even came on the air. Their friendship formed a huge part of what made the show so popular with fans. Though fans keep tuning in out of habit, the show hasn't been the same. Mike and Frank certainly have had their differences over the years. When Frank was still involved, he was always mad about American Pickers being more Mike's show than his. On the other hand, Mike was often dissatisfied with Frank's alcoholism and erratic behavior during his time on the show. Frank Fritz managed to turn his life around. Frank Fritz's alcoholism and erratic behavior is certainly the main reason he was unceremoniously booted off of American Pickers. The star took the wake-up call. Before his 2022 stroke, Frank had done quite a bit in the way of turning his life around. If Frank had stuck to his guns, it's possible he could have been welcomed back onto the show sooner rather than later. Now that this debilitating stroke has occurred, it's doubtful he'll ever return to the program. Besides being fired from American Pickers, another tragic thing that happened to Frank around the start of the pandemic was that he broke up with his fiancée. He also suffered back problems, which required medical attention. Before his stroke, Frank could be heard in the media complaining that Mike Wolfe never called to ask how his back problems were doing. Though Frank wasn't getting any support from his longtime friend, he was doing his best to pick up the pieces of his broken life. He went to rehab for alcoholism, and it appears he had completely given up drinking by the time of his recent stroke. The former star had also lost a good deal of weight, so much so that some tabloids started worrying that he wasn't eating enough. As it turns out, there was a good reason Frank lost so much weight. He suffers from Crohn's disease, which causes him to have problems with digestion. He started following a new diet, causing him to lose a bunch of weight. Frank also claimed before his stroke that giving up drinking had caused him to change a lot of his eating habits for the better. According to Frank, drinking always made him want to binge large quantities of unhealthy food. Mike Wolfe wished Frank well over social media. After the news broke about Frank's debilitating stroke, Mike Wolfe took to social media to give his regards, but it still appears the two haven't talked since Frank was booted off the show. The social media post from Mike surprised many of the people still close to Frank, as they believed the two longtime friends would never mention each other again. It's still unclear what transpired between the two, but Mike has been going through plenty of hard times on his own in recent years. Recently, he divorced from his wife of over a decade. It was a pretty big deal for Mike, who has amassed quite the fortune since American Picker's relatively humble beginnings. His former wife is named Jody, and she was the one who filed. As for the reason, Jody cited irreconcilable differences. Mike and Jody had a lot of wealth and property they needed to divide up, and it's possible these court proceedings got in the way of the star worrying about his longtime friend. It was decided during the court proceeding that Mike would have to give over $600,000 in alimony to his former wife. But this massive sum is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the wealth the star lost in the divorce. They owned 15 properties, and Mike was allowed to keep 13. But the two Jody was allowed to keep are pretty important ones. For starters, Jody was awarded the main property that she and her husband called home. This is in Nashville, Tennessee, and is valued at around $2 million. She was also given another property in North Carolina. Mike recently lost millions in a divorce. Property and alimony aren't the only things Jody was awarded in her divorce from husband Mike Wolfe. She was also given $5 million, as well as a piece of some past and future tax royalties coming Mike's way as a result of his work on American Pickers. These payments won't be nearly as grand as the aforementioned $5 million or the alimony payments of $600,000, but they'll be well into the thousands themselves. Jody was also awarded primary custody of their daughter Charlie. However, Charlie still spends plenty of time with her father. Soon after the divorce, it was announced Mike had moved on. He's now in a relationship with a model named Letitia Klein, and he's living in $1 million bachelor pad in Tennessee. Hopefully, when Frank recovers from his stroke, he and Mike can put their differences aside. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know that Mike and Frank hadn't spoken in years? Let us know in the comments section below.